Welcome to Movie Defender Childhood. This week, we watched Boondock Saints, the Cliff Note version of other shit. Okay, guys, so I'm not even going to get into this before, but this is a movie people like, so I'm sorry, but you're wrong. I'm host Nick Hoffman of Myopia and Cineprov.
Matthew W. Quinn, author of the much more coherent teen horror novel, The Thing in the Woods.
I wouldn't go that far.
Hello, this is Daniel, and my most vigilante activity ever was not paying a parking ticket. Okay, not really. I've never gotten a parking ticket because I actually have sense.
This is Molly, and the most heinous crime that I've committed was watching this as a bootleg, probably allegedly illegal.
It's not. It doesn't count if you watch it on YouTube and it's been up for 3 years and they haven't bothered to take it down because no one cares.
But I have guilt.
Well, it means Troy Duffy didn't make any money, which is a good thing.
The guy who illegally uploaded it did.
Ooh, good point.
That's true. He gets like.
But I don't feel so badly because the movie wasn't.
Well,
sorry, it was not good.
As far as we know, he was turning around and using that money to finance something better.
I doubt it.
Well, if you don't want to give Hollywood people any money because of their personal flaws, you can't see any movies at all because they're pretty much all people.
Ooh, yikes.
Ouch.
We went there, folks.
So for those of you who are thinking
Yes,
about
we
turning
did.
Matt's novel into a movie, I guess you don't want to anymore.
I can think of
You're jealous, Nick.
Of what?
I can think of one innocent person in Hollywood, and it's the young lady that plays 11 on Stranger Things.
I'm going to give a brief review of Matt's book. The first chapter really grabbed me.
Thank you.
She hasn't read past the first chapter.
Actually, I'm on chapter 3. It's
I
taken
think I
me
had to write you a
while.
review for something at one point.
I did.
I did. I don't know. This has nothing to do with this movie. We don't want to talk about this movie. This
No, we
movie's no
don't.
good.
Well, I'll talk about it then. Can I do the plot summary?
Yes,
Sure.
sir.
And then, Daniel, this was your movie, I think. This was your nominee.
For this month, I think it was. In which case, I apologize to everybody. But I kind of knew it would be bad in advance.
Yeah,
but
me too.
Yeah.
I knew this.
Hence the cult classic kind of thing.
Cult classic doesn't mean bad. It just means.
Big Lebowski's a cult
Well,
classic.
we'll get
Some
into
people
that.
like it.
A lot of people like
It means
this
that
movie.
there are certain people who like the elements that everybody else said made the film garbage. In this case, those elements are very, very terrible things that demonstrate that Troy Duffy, as we saw in the documentary Overnight, was a barely coherent alcoholic.
Yeah. Okay, so we start out in the St. Patrick's Day Mass in Boston, and the two McManus brothers get up and like kiss the feet of the giant statue of Jesus while the priest gives a sermon about the killing of Kitty Genovese, who a bunch of people just supposedly watched get killed. It turns out the actual story might have been more complicated than that, but that's the kind of the Cliff Notes version. And it turns out that might actually have taken place after they've already started killing people, because some people think that the St. Patrick's Day Mass at the beginning of the movie actually takes place later chronologically.
Okay, I'm sorry.
All right, so your plot synopsis is over.
Okay, do you mind if I jump in for the rest?
Whatever.
I'm not
Irish
sure.
brothers
I'm
kill
not.
a lot of gangsters.
Yeah,
I'm not
okay.
sure I
that's
watched the
coherent.
right movie then. I just-
Yeah, I don't understand what you're talking about. So the plot of this movie, we can just go
Does
through it.
anyone?
Yes. It's a very simple pitch. The problem is Troy Duffy thinks he's a smarter guy than he is.
Well, that's why it's kind of perfect for this month, Cool in College, because when you first get into college, you get introduced to all these ideas, and most of them actually don't really pan out in the long run. Those that still think they do are the kind of people who read Kierkegaard every night and think that it's really deep.
Or people who quote Nietzsche. For
Oh,
no
yeah,
reason.
people quote Nietzsche all the time, and no, people, that's supposed to be a stepping stone to further development. It's not supposed to be where you stop.
So the elevator pitch of this movie is these really self-righteous pricks. Okay, you been talking about another shitty movie. There's a movie called Keeping the Faith with Ed Norton and Ben Stiller.
I remember that, yeah, back in the day, where they're both trying to date this blonde woman.
It's Catherine Zeta, not Renee Zellweger, I think. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But Norton has a line: if you're going to sneak out during Mass, you're supposed to do it after the Eucharist. because it doesn't count as going to church if you sneak out before the Eucharist.
Yeah.
It's just the thing. They're terrible Catholics. They're horrible people. And they pretend to be all badass because the Russian mob is closing down their bar. And because it's a Troy Duffy movie, it can't just be an old bartender. He has to have Tourette's, so he's swearing for no reason. Then when the mob tries to shut them down, they break a bottle over the guy's head, strap him to the bar, and light him on fire because torturing a man is funny in this movie. They then kill the man in self-defense and decide that they're going to kill the entire Russian mob because the law isn't working to protect them, so they're going to protect their Irish neighborhood.
Well, first and foremost, the way they get away from these Russian gangsters, if I recall, is they break away and they just accidentally kind of kill them. Like one of them throws a toilet on the one guy's head.
Yeah, after burning one alive and using the other one to like smash bottles on his head or something. Like he's had a severe brain trauma when we see them next. The Russians come back to try to kill him. They handcuff, I believe, Norman Reedus to the toilet, and Patrick O'Flaherty is taken down to be shot gangland style for some reason.
You almost got the most Irish name in the movie, Sean Patrick Flaherty.
Yeah, Sean Patrick Flaherty, whatever.
Yeah.
They're both about the right age. This is pre-anything Norman Reedus, and I guess still nothing Patrick Flaherty. Right? I mean, he hasn't been in anything. No.
I'm sure he has been. I'm sure he's a very nice man who is active in his community and is raising a good family.
And got a paycheck. Everyone got a paycheck. They have an Italian friend named Rocco, who is named after his real name. They call him his real name. His real name is David Della Rocco, and that's what they call him in the movie, David Della Rocco. Yeah, that's kind of the movie in a nutshell. And then we have a very flamboyant Willem Dafoe, who is top billed, even though he's in barely 20 minutes of this movie.
Now, I want to bring up something about Willem Dafoe. I watched the trailer, and it identifies him as an FBI agent.
It does.
He's an FBI
Okay.
agent.
Because
He's an FBI agent.
I saw that, and I'm like, he was?
Well, it's because someone saw Twin Peaks and realized you needed to have a transvestite FBI agent to make your movie work.
A transvestite FBI agent who kills a bunch of people.
Only the one, or only the couple guys.
A couple guys. He starts to identify with what they call the Saints.
Right.
Because why
Well,
not?
first and foremost, this movie is pretty much every 90s indie action movie in a blender. It's like Troy Duffy saw Pulp Fiction 25 times.
Reservoir
over the course
Dogs.
Yeah. Or even before that, their first official vigilante kill when they're busting in on that poker game is total...
Godfather 3.
Well, it's out of... I was thinking John Woo's A Better Tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't think he would see an Asian film.
Oh,
I don't
maybe.
think he trusts them. But it's like when they come in through the ceiling and it's literally the round room, I immediately thought of that scene on the rooftop in Godfather 3 with the helicopter.
Oh, yeah, where Fat Tony just walks out of the room and then that
You guys have
helicopter comes down.
disrespected me. And then
Well, that's when a random rope comes in handy by accident or serendipity.
This is a movie where they not only rip off other things, they reference other things. Like they call what's his name?
Charles Bronson.
Bronson. They call him Charlie. And he goes, Charlie just has rope. Why not? You need rope. And you're just like, God
Hey,
damn it.
Pally, I was doing this 25 years before you. Don't try and bring me into this.
Hey, you jerks.
Hey.
Isn't that a character bit on the part of the one who's not Daryl? That he watches a lot of movies.
Not Daryl. Yeah, Connor.
Connor's not Daryl.
Yeah.
Norman Reedus. Norman Reedus survived this movie. No one else really, except for Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe has been in 200 movies at this point, I think. But yeah, okay, so... Yes, and in fact, Willem Dafoe even has that line, the only thing that can explain this crime scene is television. These boys watch a lot of TV. Why else would an idiot go through the vents? No one goes through the vents.
Well, it's like they're trying to be smart while at the same time acknowledging that this has already been done before. I mean, you mentioned Charles Bronson. This movie the plot is basically Death Wish.
But shittily done in 1999. So they swear like they've just watched Pulp Fiction.
And they drop N-bombs like they've just
And they
watched Pulp
smoke,
Fiction.
too. Everyone smokes.
Yeah, this is the last movie where people were allowed to smoke ever, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Now it's on the MPAA ratings that you can't smoke without an R rating.
Yeah. It's Well, there's like 6 Mormons in Utah who do all the MPAA ratings.
Oh, golly gee willikers, you can't show smoking. The kids might pick up and smoke.
Oh my
But
god.
violence is okay.
That's what makes this a
Fine.
period piece.
You sound like Morty.
No, this is like adult
There's a very
Mormon.
definite difference, Matt. This is not Morty. This is adult Morty. This is Nebuchadnezzar Morty.
And also not Daryl, right?
Yeah.
Also not Daryl.
Okay.
So, Pally, I did 5 of these movies, and they were considered the nadir of what I was doing.
Yeah. He cries in his last. What was his movie? Oh God, I like Charles Bronson. I just don't remember.
I think of him as being in Death Wish and Once Upon a Time in the West.
That's a great movie.
Oh, that is a great movie. Harmonica, man.
There are
He's
a
this
bunch
tall.
of Death Wish movies. Like the same crap keeps happening to him over
Oh,
and over.
there were
again.
5, if I recall
Over.
correctly.
And all he does is fall in love with a woman, then she immediately gets killed, and so he has to dust off the.
He has to
vengeance.
go and kill a bunch of minorities.
A bunch of always a bunch of.
Oh.
Goddamn Puerto Ricans killed my wife. It was actually this white guy. No, it's the Puerto Ricans. They stealing my hubcaps.
Hey, it was the same guy that killed OJ's wife.
Yeah, right. He was in I'm trying to think of the movie. The Indian Runner is really good.
I don't
Faces
remember
of
it.
Death. His last one was called Faces of Death, and that was his face. Awful. There are less wrinkles on a catcher's mitt.
Ow.
He died 15 years ago. He can't hear me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or can he?
No.
Hey, Belly.
I think
I
he
see
took
you've
the
got
We
some
Hate Movies.
problems with my face.
Now, that would be a more interesting plot. wouldn't it?
He'd take out the We Hate
The
Movies.
ghost
guys
of
before
Charles Bronson possesses Nick.
Yeah.
I shut him.
Now I'm going down to Emmett's Fix-It to fix Emmett.
That's another Simpsons joke.
I had to throw it in
Yeah,
there.
he sure did. I don't know. He cries in The Great Escape. That's good.
Oh, yeah. He was in The Great Escape. That's right.
Anyway, so
Well, the whole thing about this is that this movie introduces, it's not just like a vigilante movie. Like if you watch Death Wish or if you watch a Sam Peckinpah movie, they didn't like waste time trying to explain why they were doing it. It was a circumstance of the situation they found themselves in, which kind of made you think about it and think about what you do in those circumstances. These guys are turning it into some sort of religious ceremony, which was frankly kind of anti-papist.
You said that, didn't you?
Huh?
What?
You said that, didn't you?
Said what?
Papist.
It was that this movie's
Anti-
anti-papist? Yes,
Like
I think so.
Catholic.
I think so. To the point where, according to IMDb, the trivia section, which is, of course, the most reliable source of information on the internet, that opening scene that you were talking about with Kitty Genovese was filmed in a Lutheran church because the local Catholic diocese said, no, you can't film in here. You want this place to be part of your movie? Take off.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't let him happen. It makes you realize that this movie is really crap. I mean, I love. You can also tell a lot about these movies, as you said, from IMDb. But the kind of things that people post on this, the second most frequently asked question about this movie is Smecker gay?
The guy who is shown in bed with a man.
Who's kissing his chest? And I think he's making out with another one at a different point.
Well, when they're keeping the McManus brothers in the prison to keep them from the media, he sounds like he's having way too much fun at the idea of them spending the night.
I mean,
You're not wrong.
You're not wrong. I mean,
Right.
but, like the thing is, I'm sighing because you're right. Like, it's also a scene where you know that Willem Dafoe is playing it, that he was just tickled by what they're doing, right? Because that's what he said. Like, I have files at all these guys. These guys are meathead. They're hitmen. They're awful people. And you guys just took them out with a toilet. And, like, that scene where they're, like, eating Chinese food. The guys are telling him the story. They're really buddy-buddy. Like, he gets it right away. And then, Troy Duffy was just like, play it gayer. We're going to try again. And that's why it's so incongruous. Like from scene to scene, it's just like, I just imagine. I mean, Troy Duffy looks like he's a dipshit.
Well, there's so many scenes that exist just to shock people. Like the scene where they blow that cat away that was just on the table.
I was
I
like,
laughed
okay.
at that.
It
And
makes
there's a cat in the table right now.
Oh,
Watch out,
no.
Baker.
it serves no
Look out,
purpose
buddy.
to the movie though, and it's not. I didn't find it particularly amusing or revealing about their characters.
think
That was
they
the
were
only
just-
thing that had happened in 20 minutes, man.
Okay.
I laughed.
They were just trying to end the scene with a bang, I think.
Ooh, I see what you did there.
There's an obituary of Troy Duffy.
Wait, what?
What?
He didn't die.
He did not die. I think people wanted him to die.
After this, or?
Are you lonely? Would you like to meet
Yeah,
someone new?
Yeah, Troy
Oh,
Duffy is
man.
what happens when about pride coming before the fall, but it's apparently turned to a giant narcissistic jerk and was rude to everyone.
Troy Duffy is what happens when you dye a rum and coke green and zap it with electricity and it comes to life.
He looks like a meathead. Like, he's just a Boston guy. Like, who grew up.
Oh, sick, bro! I'm gonna make my own movie, bro.
He should have been in this movie.
He again, according to the Tribune, was supposed to be, but he turned it down for Boogie Nights.
Good call.
And yes, indeed.
Hey, bro, which one do I have a huge penis in?
Oh, sick, bro!
What am I gonna do?
Who are we impersonating?
Oh,
Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, buddy.
Oh.
I beat up some Vietnamese people once, bro.
You gotta drop it down. You gotta make it sound like you're squeezing your own balls. You go, hey, bro. What's up, bro? There you go. That's better.
Nick gives me notes all the time on these voices that I do.
But Mark Wahlberg. We're doing Mark
Yes.
Wahlberg, who is Bostonian, just as racist as Troy Duffy. He did commit a hate crime on a Vietnamese guy, but also...
In a movie or for real?
No, for real.
He stepped out of a bar and beat up a Vietnamese guy because he looked Chinese.
A couple of years ago, I remember him trying to, he said he wanted to become a reserve police officer in Boston or something, but they wouldn't let him because he had a criminal record over that
And
incident.
also, he probably couldn't pass the psychological exam.
I don't think too many cops in Boston have.
Well, you're not
Should
wrong.
ever take you on anyways.
So to this point, we are introduced to 3 cops.
Mm-hmm.
One guy whose name I'm going to forget, but is always wrong. It's what's his name?
The guy who gets the coffee.
Yeah, the guy who has to get the coffee because he's always wrong. Greenlee.
Dolly, Duffy, and Greenlee are their names.
Yeah.
So it's not Huey, Dewey, and Louie.
No.
Close.
That would have been a better movie,
It's
right?
the Northern Ireland knockoff of Huey, Dewey, and Louie.
And of course, one of them is named after the director because, of course, he would be. But
Surprised Troy Duffy didn't name the Willem Dafoe character after himself. That's clearly the Mary Sue of this
But
movie.
you did make the gay guy's last name rhyme with Pecker, so you're close enough.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Oh my God, this movie is such shit. I'm sorry.
Can I interject with a question for everybody?
Yeah.
This whole theme is cool in college, right?
Yeah.
Did everybody see this in like college or like? Cause I'll just give a little background for me. The first time I saw this was actually in high school. It was 2003. It was whenever Terminator 3 came out. It was around that time. Because I saw them both over the same Thanksgiving weekend.
Well,
I never saw it.
Well, I'll remove this if the part stays in. I think we cut this out because it was before the beginning. But to Daniel said, if you guys didn't hear this, otherwise we'll edit this out. It didn't get released widely. This was only really a VHS DVD release. It was released in 5 theaters in Denmark.
Oh, and I thought there was one at least one showing in L.A. to try and qualify it for the Oscars or
It
something.
may have been. I know that it was released 3 months later on a limited 5-theater release in the U.S. That's correct. But it opened in Denmark in its actual wide release.
Okay.
So there you go.
There you go.
There you go.
Well, I mean, that's where I saw it was on home video, DVD back in the day. DVD.
Yeah.
So, and I just remember the action scenes being really good. So I thought that because I would have been 15, 16 at the time. 1987, man.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So anyway, I just remember the action scenes being really good, and somehow that convinced me in my teenage mind that meant the movie was good, and that is definitely not correct.
The problem with the action scenes, you see them begin, then you cut to the aftermath, then you see them happening as flashback. They keep having that happen over and over again, along with way too many fades to black. This movie editing sucked.
I think that could... I see where they were trying to go with the flashback structure. It didn't work. I'll grant you that, but that could have been interesting.
Speaking of movies we saw in college, it's very Seven.
Yes.
Where you see the aftermath of a scene, then they're showing how it's done. But again, it's just so poorly done. And the only person who got the script and did his coke that day was Willem Dafoe, who's prancing around these things.
You know what this movie, not like for its content, but tonally and like structurally reminds me of in terms of its impact is Saw. I'm going somewhere with this, I promise.
Okay.
Give me some of Willem Dafoe's coke and I'll get there. Anyway, everybody thought Saw was this unique, interesting thing about the slasher serial killer genre because it tried to give the killer a motivation, which it really didn't. The entire movie is based on one scene in Seven, which is the scene where the model like gets her face mutilated and then that whole bit. It's the same with this. This is like inspired by a couple moments in Quentin Tarantino's movies up to that point, and it just goes nowhere with it. I mean, Tarantino, the way he writes, his characters are actually building to somebody, and they're actually revealing something about themselves. They're not just dropping the F word for the sake of dropping the F word. They're not doing it for shock value. There's a point behind it. And Troy Duffy, that nuance is gone.
I knew Quentin Tarantino. I worked with Quentin Tarantino. You, sir, are no Quentin Tarantino.
Very good.
Yeah.
If you want to see more about this movie, its MySpace page still exists, apparently.
Oh!
MySpace still exists?
It's apparently.
Oh.
Deep in the darkest heart of the internet, something long thought extinct lives on.
Something that the Russians didn't bother to hack.
The Space Jam website from 1996 still exists.
If you want to have some fun, watch some.
They
Oh.
cloned them.
I see where you're going with that. That almost worked there.
Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
Website.
Are you going to lie around with your shirt half open and become a meme god now?
Yes, I totally
They
would if I
opened a
could.
statue of him,
Why
right? There's
not?
a statue of
In
him
London right now as
Why
we're
not?
recording this.
Which would be much better just to stare at for the hour or so that I only watched this movie yesterday, and I don't believe it was cool to any college student or anyone else.
Oh man,
Maybe people thought that the weird editing out of chronological order was cool.
Well,
and
that was all-
Maybe they thought they were trying to be artsy.
Well, that was a very 90s thing.
It was terribly done.
Violent action scenes out of chronological order. That was, again, Reservoir Dogs, which was also about reconstructing a crime scene after it had already happened.
I will give them credit for one good thing. You know, they say show don't tell. They revealed just how clever and cultured Smecker is, that he just puts his music in, does his like Zen thing, and figures out the entire killing of the two Russian guys in the alley.
And again, what an eccentric performance. That was fun. He was having a fun time.
He was the best character of the whole
He
movie.
was
He's like
totally enjoying
this
it.
cultured ninja
Whatever.
warrior
you know,
badass guy.
Where he can just picture the scene and resolve everything. So it was fun. This little disc man and everything. Opera. Awesome.
I'll give you one thing, Matt, here.
Well, no.
Which is, I think the introduction of the character was good. Up through where they're having that little press conference is good.
Mm-hmm.
After that, it's the same scene over and over and over
Yeah.
again. And to your point earlier,
Right. Yeah.
it gets tiresome. And like the only time they up the ante at all is the last one where he's like undressing himself, which again is really stupid because he played Jesus in The Last Temptation of Christ, and they're going for that by the end too, as his clothes are torn and he's calling these men his saints.
So
Right?
yeah.
Like, it's another
just throw everything in it.
I wish you guys could see that. Like the second I said that, Matt realized I was right, and he does this grimace thing when I like destroy a little bit that he enjoys it.
Well, are you talking about him when he dresses in drag and infiltrates the...
No, I'm talking
house?
about him when
At
the
very
El
end,
Duce first shows
when
up.
when he's drunk.
No.
No.
I'm talking about when El Duce shows up and they shoot up this like suburban home, and you talked about the scene earlier where he's shooting his own gun into the air.
There was a firefight!
There was a
firefight!
He does the arm extended out thing, and his clothes are torn, and his head throws back. and he's doing his scene in the Last
Jesus.
Temptation of
Yeah.
Christ.
I never saw Last Temptation of Christ.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
done by an Italian director named Scorsese who does nothing but mob films, and it's a mob film effectively about Jesus
And Judas.
and Judas as essentially two different warring mafia group. It's an incredible movie, but again, Troy Duffy saw it and is like, I could get Jesus for my movie.
And
And
let's
he
get
did.
this
And he
guy
did.
and do it again. Yeah.
Oh, you mentioned Il Duce. So let's get into the best damn thing about this movie, which is Billy Connolly.
So the
That's
Russian
the only thing that was good in that movie.
the Russian mob hires this guy who is on death row. He's been in prison for 25 or 30 years, which is exactly how old Norman Reedus and Patrick Flannery are, because he's supposed to be their whatever.
Yeah.
Spoiler.
Spoiler.
It's a 20-year-old movie. Who cares?
Literally next year is the 20th anniversary. We didn't want to give it that credit, so we're doing it a year early, so it's its 19th anniversary. Screw it. Any hoozles. Hoozleby. They bust him out of prison. He's up for parole. They actually bring him out in like manacles and like a bird cage and just whatever. It's so stupid. He's granted parole, and then
Hey, the Irish drunk tank is no joke.
He looks like George R.R. Martin.
yeah. So it's Billy Connolly, full beard, full flat cap, 6 guns and a bandolier.
And he's got a cigar in his mouth.
Yeah,
In every
absolutely.
scene.
That was
He
fantastic.
bought it from home.
Yeah.
The day
just-
George
he just
R. R.
wandered
Martin
in.
just decided he didn't give a shit anymore.
Right.
Oh, nobody gets rid of me cigar during me scenes.
It's not bad. I mean, it's not good, but it's not bad either.
It works. I think it works
Well,
for the
excuse
context
me, I
of
think
this.
it's very better than the whole movie. But you know
effectively,
what that says. So okay.
At this point, Billy Connolly is the one they call in to try to stop the Saints, who they think is all Rocco, who we haven't really gotten into, but he is called
Oh.
Funny Man. He is
Oh God.
a low man on the totem pole in the Irish and the Italian mob.
He randomly kills these 2 like Russian bookies in a cafe at one point, and that's the most he gets into. Oh, and the cat.
I think what happened was that he was set up to be killed by the Russians, and those 2 guys knew about it. So he kills them, and then kills the bartender, who I thought was the bartender from the bar.
No,
Nope.
Right, I actually thought that was the same guy for a
did too.
minute, and I'm like, what?
And like,
they don't establish anyone, so you're fine.
But I didn't realize that that bartender had Tourette's. I just thought he stuttered.
and
I wasn't
and he
quite
kept-
sure
he kept-
because-
he keeps malapropping his proverbs.
Right.
And he swears.
Oh,
your
he
point,
swears
Everyone
very well.
swears. This is South Boston.
I know. It's Boston. It's Southie.
Matt, you're just recreating Troy Duffy stereotypes. And I don't. But I mean, like to
Wait,
your
this
point.
was a stereotype, wasn't it?
To your point, they never say he has Tourette's. There's a kid who they're in the hospital because the Saints get the crap kicked out of them as well, and they're playing with this kid who's in the hospital and scared, and they're just trying to comfort the kid. And they call the bartender Doc. He comes in and brings them a bag, which we find out what's in it later, which is essentially the gun, which is a deagle for the love of God, whatever. And he goes, "Oh, don't worry, kid. He's just messed up in the head." So we actually don't know. I'm giving him credit by saying he has a mental illness. They're saying he just drinks too much. Whatever. It's like you said, he's a Southie.
I just thought he was stuttering. I don't know. Stuttering drunk, maybe? I don't know.
Or maybe old.
That's a
and starting to
stereotype.
go.
We will not have stereotypes.
in this Troy Duffy movie.
In this whole stereotypical movie where they're stealing scenes from things and doing it badly? Okay, that's fair.
I will say, I do remember where I knew Billy Connolly from when I was a kid. He plays Billy Bones in Muppet Treasure Island.
Yes, he does.
That's right,
Yes, he
which
does.
is a much better movie.
Spot.
Yeah, it was.
It's a much better movie.
He's kind of the best. He's funny. Like he does comedy a lot.
He'd be
He's
fun
great.
to hang out with.
I mean, you couldn't keep up.
Right.
He drinks like a madman.
The only thing I can think of for the reason he did this movie is if you owe an Irish bartender one euro, you owe them €1,000,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to be fair, he's doing an accent too because he's actually Scottish.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So
Right,
he's
that's
having
right.
his own fun. It's just a shame that this is what most Americans probably know him for. Although he does play the father in Brave. So he also was saved by Disney Pixar at a certain
And he's
point
in The
too.
Hobbit as well, or at least one of them.
Yeah, I think he's one of the... Well, he's Scottish, so he's probably a troll or a dwarf.
Oh, and The
he's a
X-Files, I want to believe. Surely there's some Americans that know him from that.
Oh my God, he is in that one. That's the crappy one too, right?
Yes, that's the crappy one.
crappy one. That's a stay tuned, guys. It's about a serial killer and Nazis because, of course, it is. No aliens.
Yeah, of
No
course not.
aliens.
Which would still be a much better thing to watch.
Do you think there should be a third X-Files movie about the Peacock family and what happened to them?
Which one are the Peacock
The
family?
one from Home, the inbred family that
Oh.
kept their mom under the bed.
No. It should be Arkham Asylum. It should be that Mulder gets arrested, thrown in prison, and it's like the federal pen where a bunch of these guys end up.
Oh, there you
He
go.
has to get out.
And Billy Connolly could come back for that
Billy
too.
Connolly could come back.
Well, I remember
I remember you.
a fan theory that they were setting Mulder up to be the general of all the various freaky people and not people to fight the aliens.
Oh, laddie, that's just not what's going on here.
Well, I mean, the problem is David Duchovny stopped being handsome and just looks like an old alcoholic. I mean, honestly, he's just
Exactly.
puffy. He's like...
So he's his character in Californication.
Well, in Californication, he still had life behind his eyes. He doesn't have that anymore.
There's a reason on the Twin Peaks revival why they shot him in complete darkness.
Yeah, he doesn't look... I mean, the one who still looks good is Dana Scully, and they just kind of wrote her out of the show.
Rawr. Amen.
She's good. I mean, she lied about her age. She said she was older than she actually was to get the part. So, whatever. I guess what I'm saying is bring back Lone Gunman.
Oh yeah, I love that show.
I mean, it's,
Better entertainment than the Boondock Saints.
Well, that was actually kind of clever and funny.
well, I mean, your show. It's a shame, but the rule is your show gets canceled if you predict 9/11.
So this movie obviously didn't work.
There's a conspiracy theory, right?
They did. That
there.
episode came out a month before
That's
9/11.
right.
That the government was flying planes
Oh my
into
God,
towers.
you are right.
And then you cancel the show when you predict 9/11. It's the way that Fox has always been.
Holy
The Simpsons,
shit, that is true.
kind of sort of
Well,
did in that
the-
one shot.
Okay.
The Simpsons
Yes,
is
but
all.
that's
Come
also
on,
a
the
single
Simpsons.
shot.
Okay.
As
Simpsons
opposed to
predicts everything.
They do.
Yeah, as opposed to an entire 45-minute episode about the government flying planes into towers.
There's a reason they
Wow.
didn't use Stephen King's original ending for The Running Man in the movie, which was about
Which is
him
that?
flying a plane into a building.
Which is he literally stole a plane. Now that was the first time the Twin Towers were attacked.
So I've got a question about this movie.
I'm sorry.
There's not an answer for it. I'm so sorry.
I think there might be for this one.
Are you sure?
Everybody, I think, at the table agrees that this just didn't work
No.
on any level.
Yeah.
Right.
Why? Like, the elevator pitch, like you said, kind of sort of works.
They were
It could've
trying
been-
very hard to do something. It just didn't work.
Because none of the rest of those movies where it's a vigilante group is a talkie talk movie. And this is the talkie talk Kevin Smith like
Yeah,
Quentin
yeah.
Tarantino, where there's
Yeah.
always a quip, there's always a line, there's always a joke, there's profanity for no reason. Like you can swear, you can be angry, but what this really should be is a Western. You can even have the CSI guy because he's never in the same scene. But when they're bickering, when they're in the ducks and they're fighting each other, they're bickering like
Yeah.
they're brothers, which you
Right.
would do. That's really stupid in this movie, right?
Well, and I think another problem is trying to justify your killing by a religious thing when what are the Ten Commandments?
Well,
You
it's
know?
not even that. I mean, we get it that like these kind of very right-wing Christian-y type things don't make sense at all. But the point there is it's not even that they're justifying it. It's a cult. They have their own special prayers.
And their own stuff, so it's not.
Which, of course, is just a ripoff also of Pulp Fiction, where Samuel says that,
Ezekiel 25:17.
yeah.
which isn't a real verse, but
Right.
but then they end with the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit in Latin, so it sounds really cool.
Speaking of which, they have those Latin phrases those Latin words
and
on
veritas.
their Aquas and Veritas, which is like what, truth and justice.
Yeah, truth and justice.
I think that their hand tattoo should have been caveat and emptor.
Oh,
Oh, and on the Troy Duffy MySpace page for Boondock Saints, it's pictures of people who've gotten the same tattoos.
Oh,
That's something you regret.
oh,
Oh,
no.
man.
That's
Veritas.
that's
kind
a
of
drunk night on St. Patty's Day.
that is permanent, you know.
I hope. some of
But
these
but
people
anyway,
just did markers.
the movie I'd watch was a mirror image, so I had trouble reading things. So, and also things were off kilter because
Now, was it one of those?
it was a very bad bootleg of a very bad movie.
So, in order to get a movie on YouTube and the bots can't detect it, you slow down the speed about 10-15%.
allegedly, we have
And-
to say
oh, no, you
allegedly.
can look this up.
Allegedly, I had watched that.
Well,
as
my
a
personal
bootleg
favorite
because-
technique,
Yeah.
which is what I was about to ask, did they do that thing where it's like some 1950s woman movie usher in a poodle skirt who's like pointing at a screen
Yeah.
going, hey, take a look at this. And it's the actual movie that's like maybe 20%
No,
of the
actually, it
range.
had some kind of besides the mirror image thing going on. It said, for best results, speed up your interface by this much.
Yeah.
And scenes were either enlarged, besides being mirror, or cut off in strange ways, which I wasn't sure if that was part of the movie directing or if I was just watching a very bad bootleg of a very bad
Was it
movie.
also like unusually dark?
Yes.
Oh yeah, okay. That's all part of how you get a movie hacked on
Well,
YouTube.
I'd never done anything like that, allegedly, and I still haven't, allegedly.
I mean, you're fine. It's on Netflix, guys.
But-
If you really
but
want to
still,
see it, it's 100
you don't understand
minutes.
I was going to say, all about intellectual properties and stuff, but there was nothing intelligent about this, so I think I can get away.
I see what you did there.
You're fine. You really are. I mean, you can look it up on YouTube now. It's the first result for Boondock Saints because after being up for 5 years, they stopped.
I highly advise you not to without pausing and drinking a beer in the middle, just because.
Boondock Saints. Yeah, here you go. It's been seen 16,000 times, and it was uploaded by Mila Kunis, which is not true.
And you may even want to drink that beer warm if you're desperate, or a couple shots, just because.
Yeah, here you go. I found it.
Are you looking at the one I watched?
Of course, why not?
Oh.
It's so dark.
It is very dark.
It is, and then the backwards words, so that's why I had no idea what their tattoo said.
Yeah, although the thing's being cut off, this is really cut off.
Yeah, so a lot of stuff didn't make sense to begin with, but I thought, are you trying to be really artsy, or is this just a crap copy? Or
No, I mean, like, they even have a scene, if I recall correctly, in a diner, before, which is what they do, right? Which is,
Yeah.
again, this is Pulp Fiction.
Well, isn't that the scene where Rocco goes in and kills those two Russian mobsters?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he just
who are
totally
giggling.
loses it and just
Yeah.
kills everyone.
Because he does realize that everyone's in on it, and they really did want him dead.
Oh, and he does
Right.
die, by the way. So I don't care about spoiling that. That was fine when he died.
Yeah, when Rocco died. I
Yeah.
had forgotten about it, and I was like...
So his modern life ended.
All right, you know what? We're good.
that was better than the whole movie.
That is a
Thank you.
mic drop
That
right
was
there.
Great.
We're good. We're done. So we'll go around the table and give our final thoughts, I think. I think that's fine. Daniel, you. Well, no. We'll come to you last because this was your pick.
Okay.
Quinn, what do you got?
It sucked. It sucked.
Not even a C1s?
No. It's got some good Irish music in it. That I liked that.
Fair enough.
It's a waste of time.
Good.
For the love of God, don't watch it.
Faith in Begorra.
It would not be perfect.
I think you turned Welsh there at the
I
end.
know.
You're-
Well, everybody's accent was going in and out during this movie, so it doesn't matter.
Especially Norman Reedus, who I think is of Irish descent, but is not actually Irish. But he didn't sound the same from scene to scene, so whatever. Daniel, what do you think?
Well, I figured this would be the perfect archetype for this whole theme, which is stuff that seemed cool in college. And like I said, it's because that the ideas about, oh, what does justice really mean and what does it mean to punish the bad seem all cool and sexy when you're younger. But the way that this movie presents those ideas is terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really want to see it done well, go watch... And even then, this movie is problematic in retrospect. Go watch Dirty Harry, which is at least well-directed and well-acted. Or go watch an old Sam Peckinpah movie. Again, probably more problematic in retrospect, but at least he was a skillful director. Troy Duffy is both incredibly stupid and an incredibly poor director and an incredibly poor writer. He's just... trying so hard to think that he's Martin Scorsese or Quentin Tarantino or any number of 90s auteurs, and he's just not. It's the equivalent, really, of a 5-year-old wearing a feather boa and claiming they're a supermodel.
That's what the gay guy does. He plays with a fellow bro in the porno house, remember?
Oh, yeah, good point.
Oh, my God.
Ew.
Here's the thing. This movie... he saw a lot of movies but didn't get them, and then he thought he would make his own movie, right? Like the fact
This looks cool.
that's exactly
I'll
what
do
it is.
it, but without understanding the nuance or the meaning behind like real films, he just like I'll copy it because it was cool.
Exactly. I mean, like the Godfather movies swear a lot, and they're kind of racist, but when you put them in the 40s and it is really us versus them, it's a different feeling, right?
Right.
And the thing is, when you have a racist character, even in Pulp Fiction, he stops being racist when he's supposed to be redeemed, right? When he becomes the good guy, Samuel L. Jackson cleans it up. And this movie doesn't do that. They're just all dislikable to the very end. I don't understand why people think this movie is something other than, again, the elevator pitch of it. But upon rewatch, I don't find any of the charm. Like, there are moments early on when, I guess to Matt's point, the first time you see something, it's clever or funny, but no joke is said once. No clever shot is done once. Everything is 100 times, and it's all done better elsewhere, guys. This one, I think... uncharacteristically curmudgeonly Matt was right. This is a movie you don't really need to see. Like, it's on Netflix. It's one of the easiest ones we've done to watch.
Or maybe you could watch the first half hour since it repeats itself. And then just fast forward to the very end.
There was a firefight.
There was a firefight.
No, first half hour, the second half hour.
That's near the end.
That's near the end.
I mean, you just see it, guys. Like, if you want to watch it, you can. You're going to be disappointed. If you liked this back in the day and haven't seen it in 10 years, it might be better to stay in your memory. Mm-hmm. I saw this at a friend's house.
It might be a fonder memory if you don't.
Well, I mean, like, so I didn't tell my story. Like, I saw this after, like, mid-college. Mm-hmm. I would go over to a friend's house, and one of us would bring a movie, the other one, like, just back and forth. That's all it was. My buddy Ben Chambers, that's where we watched it. We also watched a bunch of stuff, random stuff. I saw Bananas, the Woody Allen movie.
Yeah, I remember that.
And one time he said, like, a buddy of his saw this and thought he liked it. We watched the whole thing. It was terrible. We agreed it wasn't good. You can't be bothered.
Two more things. First, and I'm not sure if you've mentioned this yet, Ron Jeremy is in this movie.
For a surprisingly long amount of time.
Well, what character is he?
He's the one during that joke 'em up scene with Rocco, who after Rocco is doing the joke, is like, the N-word, and Ron Jeremy says, say what the N-word is.
One of the gangsters.
Yes.
And then he's the one who dies in the porno house.
Yes.
He's the one that they shoot in the porno house.
Oh, that's the guy.
He's the schlubby guy with the long hair.
From the real porno? Is that the guy?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's the ugly dude, and why are you porn star? But never mind that.
Yeah.
Because, but...
Well, I mean, this was that era where he was in a lot of movies. Wasn't he also in...
He was in Orgasmo. That's the only other thing I remember.
I thought he made a cameo in the Marky Mark movie you just talked about.
Boogie Nights?
I thought he was in Boogie Nights,
Yeah,
too.
he was in Boogie Nights briefly.
Yeah, I mean,
it wouldn't surprise me.
It was in a party scene. Like, at this point, he had, like, a career. Ron Jeremy thought he was going to act like an adult.
For like a mainstream thing or something.
The other thing is, I'm sure...
When he said Marky Mark movie for a second, I thought The Departed.
He's also in that. He's actually really good. It's so funny when he has an actual director. When he has a real director, he can really act. Oh, sick, bro! That's funny.
So watch any of the other movies that we mentioned during this podcast rather than this one.
Oh, and the other thing is, I'm sure we've given him some shit here tonight, but I'm sure Sean Patrick Flannery, I think we said Flattery originally.
We sure did.
I'm sure he's a very nice man in real life.
Yeah, not all Hollywood people are wretches. I do really like Steven Spielberg, fellow Eagle Scout.
Oh, good.
David Lynch is also an Eagle Scout.
Oh, he is?
That's so is Bill Clinton.
Well, are you sure?
Yes, he is.
Great.
And Gerald Ford. And all the astronauts who landed on the moon.
And I must say lots of astronauts. You're repeating the
speech, aren't you?
Lots of astronauts from Ohio. And Spielberg from Ohio.
That's very good.
He's from Ohio?
Yes, sir.
Where the buses don't run.
I remember reading a bunch of biographies of him long ago. I don't remember that.
And what's that guy? Stein, the kid writer.
R.L. Stein?
R.L. Stein from Ohio.
Oh.
Clark Cable from Ohio. This is my plug for Ohio. I also work for the Chamber of Commerce.
My dad was...
have you been hired to create a Cleveland tourism video, which you then have to do in a day?
Michael Bloomberg, Rex Tillerson.
Right.
So many good people are Eagle Scouts. Stephen Breyer.
Who's he?
Supreme Court Justice, buddy. Robert Gates.
Ooh.
Robert
Gates. Yeah.
Eagle Scout doesn't matter. As an Eagle Scout myself, a lot of dipshits were Eagle Scouts. The head of Marriott. It doesn't matter.
Well, the thing is
Sam Walton from Walmart. He was an Eagle Scout.
But you gotta think. what you do as a young person
Makes very little difference.
and what you do later on might be a total different thing.
Oh, and the actor who played Napoleon Dynamite was an Eagle Scout.
He sure was. So was
Awesome.
Bill Amend, the creator of Foxtrot. I'm a fan of him.
I would like to see the Napoleon Dynamite dance scene
Oh.
over and over again rather than this movie.
L. Ron Hubbard was an Eagle Scout.
There you go.
The
He
eagle
was-
has landed.
No.
The eagle
I guess
has landed.
So with that,
This concludes today's episode of List of Random Eagle Scouts.
oh, there's so many.
And Ohioans.
The mayor of DC, Marion Barry, the guy who was arrested for smoking crack
God, right.
while he was mayor in the mayor's office, he was smoking crack and was
Right.
arrested. He was an
Eagle
Eagle Scout
Scout.
too. Hey, so tune in
Do
next
you
week.
think trashing Boy Scouts is going to get you more fans?
Yes. Absolutely. Ever since they banned gay people, I've not been a fan. Now, luckily, they went back on that, and they kicked out the Mormons who made them do it. So good. It's frankly was disgusting.
But I also heard that they were trying to cut in on the Girl Scout scene by including girls, which I think Girl Scouts can be their own thing. And
I mean, that...
and having been a Girl Scout, I think they should be separate.
Oh, the Girl Scouts still exist. They're a different organization.
Oh, if it does help here, Matt, George Meyer, one of the Simpsons' most famous writers, is also an Eagle Scout.
Well, there you go.
There you
We got to
go.
redeem this Eagle Scout theme. There's got to be
I mean, and
people
you were
that
an Eagle
remain
Scout, so you're
good.
Fine.
Absolutely. And you know what? He follows all of the things that you're supposed to do as an Eagle Scout.
Oh, good. So tune in next week. What was I going to say? Oh, next week is my choice? I don't know. Next week we have more on movies that were bad in college. Check out Bad from College. So tune in to the Facebook page where we're going to have a poll up where you can guess the movies that we're going to choose. We have our 4, like normal. But there are obviously plenty more. We've even mentioned some here that we thought could have made it, and we're not going to kind of let out which ones are actually going to be coming out. But you should give that a shot. But further, tune in next week and every future week as we put another piece of your past on trial. And don't forget, once a month we're having a bonus episode. This month we start Daniel's series called Disremembered.
Oh, boy.
And hope you enjoy that. They'll be releasing on the ESO Patreon as well if you want to hear them earlier. Thanks, guys.